Ladies and gentlemen, it appears that our good friend Bob Graves has more questions than answers. What is going on with this? We need some answers. But today, I'm afraid it's just more questions and maybe answers to the questions. In just a moment on The Unconventional Pastor. Stay tuned.
Well, good evening. My name is Bob Graves, and they call me the Unconventional Pastor. It's good to be back with you again. Here it is Wednesday. Wow, the time is just going past. To think that we're in the middle of July already. It's crazy. We've been having quite a hot spell up here in the Northeast, as a lot of other people have. And I'll tell you, today they had a heat advisory, and it was really bad out there. But although we were out and about today doing all kinds of things, busy all day, we were fortunately in an air-conditioned van most of that time. And the only time we were really out in the horrible heat was when walking from the van to this store or walking from the store to the van, and etc. But anyhow, so I made it, and I didn't dry to a crisp or fry. So here we are. Now, I can't tell you how many times it happens that preachers will get all kinds of questions that come their way when people find out that you're a preacher, so they want you to answer questions, which is kind of odd in a way, because the truth is pastors really aren't answer grapes. They're not people who know all the answers, and a lot of people who even go into the ministry with even good intentions don't necessarily think that they're going in there because they have answers. Some of them are just really interested in doing what they perceive to be as the work that they will be doing, and so having answers wasn't necessarily part of the deal. But it's interesting to note that there is, I think, something kind of strange and fallacious about the whole idea that not only do some pastors seem to think that we have all the answers, but that some people who aren't Christians seem to think that pastors ought to have all the answers, which is kind of a strange expectation in and of itself. So anyhow, but there've been a number of questions that have come my way, and I suppose that the real truth is that over the years, the kind of answer I would have given to some of these has varied considerably. So some of the questions that I get asked are asked by people who are genuinely sincere believers, who are really asking the question because they're trying to figure something out, and while other people are asking this question because they think it's a great question to stump a believer, to demonstrate somehow that their belief is unfounded or inappropriate or ought to be countered somehow. And some people ask these questions because they're really trying to not necessarily attack a believer, but because they want to demonstrate that this is a buffer zone for them to kind of be left alone. People ask questions for all kinds of reasons, so and not always easy to tell just what the particular reason is any given individual is using at any time. Anyway, so here we come to all these different questions. Before I get to any of them, though, I do want to kind of open up my clock so I can keep an eye on what I'm doing with time. Okay, there we go. Okay, very good. All right, and I'm gonna get rid of that. Okay, and anyhow, so one of the first questions I wanted to answer tonight was a question really asked to me by an atheist, a number of years ago, who, strangely enough, I felt didn't realize that they were kind of playing both sides against the middle. But he asked me, he said, doesn't the subjectivity of morality throughout the earth prove that God does not exist? And the odd thing is that there's a sense in which what they were doing is they're trying to turn an argument that some theists think has merit on its ear. And that is this, that there are some theists who would want to argue that the pervasiveness and the unanimity of a moral ethic throughout the earth proves that there is a moral giver, and that moral giver, lawgiver, is God. And so somehow they believe that this character trait within human beings is not the sort of thing that would evolve, and so therefore it is proof that that God must exist because we bear this trait, which is interesting. An interesting argument. It doesn't work for me, to be honest with you. I don't see the logic in it. I don't see how being moral people has anything other than to do with the fact that we are capable of empathy and that we're capable of intelligence. And so it would seem to me that this would be a common trait among all human beings. In fact, it would be a common trait among any being that has feelings and has a certain level of intelligence. I think you can, we've all probably seen on YouTube some of these cute videos of the dog that has been caught having broken into the cat snacks, and the owner comes home and finds the wrapper on the floor, and he's got a couple of dogs there, and he shows the wrapper to one of the doggies, and the doggie is just looking, well, kind of sad, but not too disturbed. And then the other dog is really kind of upset at seeing the master and seeing the wrapper and being talked to, and the dog is feeling bad. The dog seemed to have a sense of having done something wrong. Whether or not these are the words that best fit what the dog is feeling, the dog is somehow internally disturbed and emotionally affected by having behaved in a manner that the dog understands the owner doesn't like. What does this demonstrate? The truth is, I don't really know for sure. I find it fascinating and interesting, and in some sense, it also makes me feel a certain kinship with the dog, to be honest with you. But anyway, so this is kind of taking that moral argument and trying to turn it on its ear, because the person who offers the the moral argument usually fails to realize that, when you look at all of the various cultures, they have different moralities. And not only that, but in every culture, everything they consider to be immoral is also something which in some other way they have no problem violating it. For example, almost every culture certainly recognizes that, I'm not aware of any of them that don't, that murder is somehow wrong. And yet all cultures seem to have some sort of a sense of when it's okay to kill someone. And but they differ in terms of what they would consider to be when it's okay, and things like that. So anyhow, there seems to be this powerfully subjective element in determining just what the morals ought to be. And someone wanted to had asked me, doesn't this prove that God does not exist? Which is, I guess, an interesting question. But my response is that, to me, this kind of an argument fails for the same reason why the moral argument fails, and that morality, as well as cognition, opinions, ideas, all of these are formed in human beings through a process of, biosemiotic acquisition of ideas and concepts that are multiply layered in various ways based upon experience, perception, and a variety of things, so that by the time any intelligent being possesses a set of thought objects in their brain that are associated with anything that has meaning, they're made up of a large component gathering of so many different parts that are going on that it's impossible for any two human beings to think absolutely identically. It's just not going to happen. And so the subjectivity of morality, if it proves anything, it just proves that the process and the multiple layers that human beings go through to arrive at the ideas and thoughts that they possess and the conclusions that they cling to is multiply varied. And so I guess I don't. When I look at morality and when I look at the subjectivity of morality, to be honest with you, I don't get what it says about God, plus or minus. I don't see how the idea of God even enters into it. Now, those of you who watch me know that I am a theist, and I would certainly attribute, perhaps even in what we might call a presuppositional way, I would certainly attribute this quality of at least a need for morality, even if we don't share subjectively the same morality, as being part of what is in us because we are made in the image of God. But I don't, although I would attribute it to that, I don't see that as something that is uh, incontrovertibly required to think or to conclude, or that it in any manner represents a proof. More an interesting manifestation. In fact, I would be of the kind of a mind that would want to say that it's impossible for mankind to possess any aspect that they have as a result of being made in the image of God, without that being also fully explicable in who and what we are just by our very nature. And so it's proof of nothing. It's an observation of us, and as a result, to try to take it farther than that in terms of some sort of scientific certainty is meaningless, useless, and a waste of time. So anyway, that would be my answer to that question. Doesn't the subjectivity of morality prove that God doesn't exist? No, it just proves that morality is very subjective, and that human beings are subjective in their conclusions about everything, not just morals. So it's to me just an unremarkable truism that that is interesting and something to keep in mind when understanding what human beings are and how they think and what they do. But I don't know that it is necessarily a proof of anything that we can just kind of start banking on. Another question I get asked many times by atheists is a question like this: how can an intelligent person believe that Jesus rose from the dead? And I think the answer to that question is I have no idea how they could. I can't think of a single way that an intelligent person can believe that Jesus rose from the dead. I, I I think that given our experience of what death is, the finality of it all, in spite of the fact that we have seen some miraculous, moving forward with the field of medicine. Well, we're able to resuscitate people we'd never thought of resuscitating a century ago. Even when we began to discover such things as, uh, when you give somebody mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. When we first discovered that was like, wow, how you can have somebody. These are people who would have just normally left for dead, and now we found out we can do it. We found that some people have been able to, after the younger you are, seems to be the easier to do this. But some people fall under the ice and they're in the river and or they're in the lake, and it takes 20, 30 minutes to get them out, and you bring them out and they're limp, and then you bring them to temperature and you empty their lungs and you try to revive them, and some of them they come back and with no brain damage and what have you. It is an amazing thing that we can do that. But according to this story of Jesus, what he went through, and the fact that we're talking about 3 days, 3 nights later, how can we believe that this is a person who comes back from the dead? It would seem to me that if he was to be resurrected, that we would not only find that life returns to his body, but the damage done to his body, based on the story that we hear, would seem to me to also have to be in some way healed. Otherwise, life coming back to his body would be extremely fleeting, and he'd just die again. So that question, how can an intelligent person believe that Jesus rose from the dead? And I think that, to me, a good answer is I don't see how they can. And I don't see how you could expect them to. And I think that an intelligent person, particularly more so than an unintelligent person, would and should find this to be a preposterous proposition. However, all of us have had moments in our life when we have discovered something that to us was absurdly impossible, and to discover that, well, it isn't, and our first experience of that might be very bewildering, and we might then later discover that our expectations weren't quite correct. The truth is, we don't really understand life, and we don't really understand death. We don't. And so we're already dealing with something that we can admit is, in many ways to us, a mystery. And so I suppose that really, even originally, the only way that the original disciples were able to believe that Jesus rose from the dead was that, according to the story, they saw him. And it was to them a shock. We even read the story of, so-called doubting Thomas, who is probably an intelligent guy saying, come on, you guys are talking about this, but do you realize what you're saying? How insane this is? I'm telling you that until I see the holes in his hands and I'm sorry, but this is just, taking things a bit too far. And he's right. This is an outrageous claim, but nonetheless, it does not mean that it isn't true. Now, I certainly couldn't expect anybody to simply say, "Well, because I do believe that he rose from the dead, that therefore you should." I don't think you should at all. In fact, to me, I think the claim is rather odd and bizarre, but at the same time, when you begin to see what energized the early disciples, that even if, let's say, for the sake of argument, let's say that Jesus didn't rise from the dead, these people believed he did, and believed he did quite in spite of how radically unlikely such a thing seemed, even for people who could be so superstitious as in their day. So that these people did respond to this circumstance, evidently believing that, and this was their testimony. Personally, although that is where my faith is, I personally don't see why it is absolutely essential that somebody buy into this idea. If a person finds it too untenable for intelligent reasons, then that's where they're at. And given the nature of what is being claimed here, I don't see how we can complain about that. I don't see how we can disagree with their reasonableness in finding that to be a bit bizarre. Anyhow, we have a question coming in. Viewer comment: funny how all the miracles stopped when the advent of the video camera. I suppose you could say that cameras killed miracles. I've heard that before. It is kind of funny. You have no idea to what degree alleged miracles, miracles aside, alleged events, when documentation is not possible or not even expected, the level to which people can go in order to deceive is probably incalculable. So I think that there is some reasonableness to this this funny statement here about when the cameras disappeared. The truth is though, it's not as if we had miracles and miracles and miracles, and then when documentable technology begins to explode, then these miracles kind of disappear. It seems to be, at least allegedly from the biblical record, that miracles were not a constant aspect of what was going on within the cult of Yahweh, or even the phenomenon of Jesus. We don't, we for the most part, they're very brief in that story. There's not a lot of miracles. So we basically find these three clusters of miracles, around the time of Moses, around the time of some of the prophets, and around the time of Jesus and the beginning of the church. And other than that, the rest is just, in fact, even within the community of the church, claims of miracles outside those three basic periods of history are even usually denied by what you might refer to as Bible-believing Christians. So it's not as if, oh, we have all these miracles and then they tend to disappear. When? No, we didn't really have all those miracles. And not only that, but if we're going to be fair with the biblical text, it seems to me that that the purpose of miracles did not seem to be found in the miracles themselves. And to be honest with you, I personally don't believe in miracles, but that's more of a metaphysical statement. Not to say that I don't believe that the things that may have been called miracles didn't necessarily happen, but that if you're going to get to the point where you can accept the possibility that Jesus is the Son of God, that he is God, that he's God manifested, then it shouldn't be surprising that he has up his sleeve, as it were, the knowledge and the technology of what it really takes to get some of these things done in a manner that is really totally in keeping with nature physics, without violating any laws of anything. But just what that knowledge would be, I haven't got a clue. Otherwise I'd be going around doing miracles. There's a lot of things that we can't explain, but anyhow, the comment here, viewer comment. Funny how all the miracles stopped at the advent of the video camera. I'll tell you what, and they returned as soon as Photoshop got to where it was really excellent. Today we're at the point where seeing is not believing. A photograph can be a complete lie, as can a video, and it's just amazing what technology can do with that. Anyhow, this concept of being risen from the dead, there, as alarming as the claim is, I think it's so alarming, in fact, that I think it is unreasonable to expect that an intelligent person should just say, well, okay, yeah, sure. But at the same time, I think that there's a certain humility where one could say, well, I can't imagine how it would happen, but far be it from me to say that this just couldn't ever be, even though I might not be able to see how it could ever be, and to have such skepticism about it that in the end, well, if I had to bank my life on it, I'd have to say it didn't happen. I'm comfortable with that, and I don't think that's a problem. In fact, the truth is, when Jesus said, blessed are those who believe and have not seen, there's a sense in which I think Jesus is admitting the problem here. The violation of a sense of coherent consistency in one's experience is a bit demanding. And so I don't see a problem with this. In fact, these people who did see, supposedly the only when you stop to think about it, the only reason why they could believe that Jesus rose from the dead is because, in spite of how absurd such a claim is, here he is, according to the story, at least in the midst of them, talking with 120 in the upper room. What do you do with that? It doesn't matter how intellectually impossible this is, if he's there. So I think that where it leaves me is this. I can appreciate this problem. I really do. And it may be for some people unsurmountable. And to me, that's fine. Because just as as I had understand the way this worked out, was just as Jesus rose from the dead and appeared to his disciples, and I do believe in the redemption of all. If Jesus did rise from the dead, then there will come a day when all will see him. And if it's going to take that before you believe, that's fine. I mean, I can't blame you, particularly given the fact that people who are people of faith have been not your brightest tools in the shed, not your most honest of people, not the least manipulative of people, and haven't. It's not as if they haven't constructed a religion that is extremely abusive. And so, I got to be honest with you. I don't know that many of the people making this claim that he rose from the dead possess the sort of credibility an intelligent person ought to give into. So, it's fine by me if you wait forever. Anyway. New viewer comment. My dad once told me that he viewed the word supernatural. My dad once told me that he viewed the word supernatural as meaning merely that which is beyond the natural, and that he viewed the word natural as those things in this universe which came natural to man's understanding. In this way, that which is supernatural yesterday is no longer supernatural today, because we know more, and more is natural to our understanding. I think there are plenty of things today which are supernatural, and so I believe in miracles. The universe is full of them. I have no problem with that kind of a way of viewing it, and I'm pretty sure that throughout all of the ages that the way different individuals perceived the use of supernatural, and it may have varied, and some people just take it, oh no, this is supernatural, it's like beyond the laws of physics, and to me, the issue is moot, and unworthy of arguing, and perhaps a lot of fun to think about. So I have no problem with that. If we want to use supernatural in that sense as an expression, and natural as an expression, as if those two are divided by what seems obviously normative and typical to us based on where we're coming from and what we see and what we know, and that which is beyond us is then somehow supernatural, super understandable, perhaps, or super credible, but that's fine. We've dealt with those things throughout the period of church. I do think it's absurd, though, to demand this concept of miracles that goes beyond the laws of nature. To me, that I don't even see the purpose in such a thing. That doesn't mean that I know everything, but count me in on those people who find that's a little bit too much for my intelligence, if you can call it that, to kind of accept. Viewer comment: 1,000 years ago, the telephone would have been considered a miracle. I'm enjoying your talk, Bob, and I agree with you. You're just now making me think. Well, wonderful. Yes, in this sense that, the things we can do technologically today would have been extremely strange, possibly even witchcraft or something else to people of days gone by. But perhaps this is even something that adds to my argument that this is why there really is no such thing as a miracle in the sense of a violation of nature. There are just aspects of nature we don't understand. For example, although I certainly don't believe all claims of healing, um, there have been inexplicable healings that have occurred that even medical science has said, I don't know. Um, we don't understand healing. I remember one time reading this study where people, they brought people in to pray and curse bacteria in a petri dish. And they brought people into in another room, and where they came in to pray and ask for the well-being of the bacteria in a petri dish. And that, according to this study, and I have not done anything to validate or verify it, so I'm not here telling you it's true. I don't know if it's really true. It's just the way it came to me. That the bacteria that they cursed was not thriving, and yet the bacteria that they prayed for thrived. And I remember seeing this on an Oprah Winfrey show, and Oprah Winfrey said, "Well, that's kind of silly. Why would God be making the bacteria thrive, and why would God be making this bacteria die? I mean, that seems kind of silly." And I'm thinking, who says God has anything to do with it? We have no clue. What we as human beings, in what we deeply desire, or at least focus upon desiring, we have no idea at what kind of non or semi-telepathic or whatever, I don't know, I can't explain it. We have no idea to what degree our aura, as it were, has an impact on each other. It's quite possible that sometimes maybe there's that kind of aura connection that does create some sort of a spontaneous healing energy. I don't know, but at the same time, I guess I'm not entirely ready to dismiss the ideas, and so it's possible that things like that really don't have anything to do with asking God to do something, and God then praying does it. That would seem kind of silly to me also. It would also seem kind of neglectful that he didn't do it all the time then. But so, it's another reason, I guess, why I'm not so caught up on the miraculous. And it's quite possible that we actually have. I mean, like they say, laughter does good like a medicine. And it is amazing how love and friendship, when a person is ill, can at times be that which makes a huge difference in the speedy recovery of another individual. But here again, I'm talking about things that I really don't understand, and certainly couldn't speak about dogmatically. Thanks for your comments. Anyway, there we go. So this is kind of an offshoot then of that question that how can an intelligent person believe that Jesus rose from the dead? And to me, I say that is admittedly a difficult thing. I don't know how they could. They're just going to have to think about that themselves, and if they can ever accept it, then they can, and if they can't, they can't. And I don't have any problem with that. Other questions that have come up, and this is something that I've been asked by Christians many times, and I think I even spoke about this once on another show. What is speaking in tongues? And the charismatic movement was just filled with people speaking in tongues. And the Pentecostal movement, the Assembly of God, there's various other sectors of the Christian community that have focused a great deal on the speaking in tongues. And there are, of course, other groups of people who don't have anything to do with it at all. And you consider it demonic and of the devil. It's just wrong, and it's from a bygone day. My personal understanding of speaking in tongues is something that comes from both my attempt to make sense of these claims and my combined with my background in studying linguistics. And that is this, that from everything we have, claims to the contrary notwithstanding, there are no credible linguists who would admit to the notion that people who speak in tongues are actually speaking a real language. There are certain types of patterns that fail to exist as they might in a real language, and there's certain patterns that do exist that demonstrate some sort of various habitual patterns, so that people who are speaking in tongues are not actually speaking a a legitimate language that would exist in the sense of other human languages. Uh, and so I personally don't see this phenomenon of speaking in tongues as having anything to do with real languages. And to be honest with you, I don't see that the expression even implies that, doesn't mean that. Um, Given the way that words can be formed and the fact that this phenomenon seemed to exist in sectors of the church, it's not unique, by the way, to Christianity. There are other places in the globe where speaking in tongues is something that has been a practice of various people for various reasons. And it, I get the impression that what speaking in tongues actually is this, that there are things that we as human beings would like to be able to say, but we really don't know how to say it. We don't know what to say. We don't know what to think. And yet sometimes we are concerned or troubled or bothered or curious or some ways kind of even unable to get beyond some ideas. And we're not sure. And sometimes if something is bothering us or troubling us, we could go and talk to somebody and talk to them about it. And it's amazing how sometimes even after talking to somebody, even though we go away with no answers, just having gotten our concerns off our chest seems to be all the relief we really needed. We really just had to kind of get it out. And and I do believe that there are things going on deep within us that we can't quite articulate. And so I think that it's quite likely that this speaking in tongues was people not being, didn't feel silly enough to just kind of open their mouth and just jabber. And what are they saying? Nothing. What does it really mean? Nothing. But there is something inside of them. And just going through the physical process of vocalizing and the areas of the brain that are involved in making that happen, it can give to the person a, a feeling and a sense that whatever it is that's inside of them has been expressed, even though they know it hasn't. Uh, but a person who would do this to God would know that God knows what's going on inside of me. He understands what I'm going through. He makes more sense of it than I do. So even if I can't express it in a way that makes sense, I can get it off my chest nonetheless. And so they open their mouth and in prayer, they they let out nonsense. It's kind of like, well, if I don't know what to say, I'll just say nothing, but I'll say it, you know? And so to me, um, kind of like, you know, primal scream therapy, you know, if something bugging you and you scream about it, I guess you get it off your chest, whatever. But to me, that what speaking in tongues is. And I think that in that sense, it can be psychologically very therapeutic. I think it can be very helpful. And I'll be honest with you. Um, I have spoken in tongues in just that very way. And I found that there was a particular time in my life where it was very helpful to me in arriving at a sense of having gotten in touch with what is there and expressing it, even though I don't understand it. But I never for a moment thought it was anything miraculous or anything, a gift of the Holy Spirit, other than to be able to have a sense that, well, God knows what I'm thinking. God knows what I'm going through. God knows how I'm struggling with it. And I'm just trying to achieve that cathartic release of just having gotten it off my chest. And so I don't perceive speaking in tongues as being anything miraculous of the sort, but rather that it is it's just kind of like humming in phonemes, you know, to just get something that is inside you out, and it helps to do that. Looks a little silly, looks a little strange. And I think that even when Paul was talking about, you know, to interpret it, that maybe somebody knows what you're going through and can help express this, that maybe it's not such a good idea to even do that in public, you know? People will think you're crazy. And maybe you are, you know? But personally, I feel that when I can get something inside of me out, I feel so much relief. It keeps me from going crazy, you know, particularly if something is distressing me or disturbing me. But nonetheless, you know, that is what I would say as I understand speaking in tongues. And I don't have a problem with The behavior, the habit, the practice. I do have a problem with the way that some Christians try to explain that it's a gift from God and a gift of the Holy Spirit and a real language and stuff like that. To me, I think that they're trying to overcome the foolishness of it, and it is a foolish thing. But I'll tell you what, being foolish sometimes is a great therapy. I'll tell you. Uh, uh, Ask Joey. Sorry, Joe. I love you. But anyhow, so that's my understanding of what speaking in tongues is. Another question that comes my way frequently when I was in the ministry was, how do I deal with temptation? And originally my answer to that was, when I look back at it, I feel so embarrassed sometimes at the stupidity and the ignorance that was mine, particularly at the time when I was involved in a more fundamentalist view. But you have to pray about it and look for the Holy Spirit to kind of deliver you, and you have to. Then there may have been times when I thought, you have to find your way free of the demonic influences and stuff like that, and I'm trying to be real biblical about it. Finally, um, you know, I got to the point where I found that, how do you deal with temptation? Well, what is temptation? Temptation is that, as I don't understand it now, it's that moment when there's some sort of shortcut to ethics that you'd like to take and that you think you can get away with, and where you're doing this when you're really thinking of yourself in a very self-centered way, or thinking of your own in a very self-centered way, or thinking of your people in a very self-centered way, so that in a sense temptation is what we think of and what we feel when we're looking for ways to solve our problems, and we have given up the idea that the solution must include um, the well-being of others and ourselves. And so to me, although I'm not sure what temptation might mean, so let's make up something. Let's say you're going through a tough time financially, and you come and you're walking down the street and you see somebody who's trying to get something in their pocket, and some cash falls out, and you walk behind them, you pick it up, and you find they dropped $300 with $300 bills, and they're still within your sight. And what should you do? Um, your temptation here at the moment might be to keep it as you think it. But to me, it seems to me the response to temptation is to completely ignore the temptation and think about, what would love do? Do I want to be a loving person? And am I comfortable with myself being a loving or a selfish person? And maybe the answer will be, well, I'm comfortable being selfish. But and the truth is, we often are. But I think that there's a sense here in which temptation is perhaps a way of describing the conundrum. But I think that there's no future in even focusing on the temptation, that we have to decide what kind of person we want to be, what sort of character we hope to develop, whether or not other people are really important and valuable, and whether or not we want to be the kind of people who live toward that value and celebrate it and uphold it, and what have you. So I really think that the answer to temptation is love. Love does no harm to its neighbor, uh, and that is something where to me that's really where temptation is. I don't see. There's a sense in which temptation is a temporary lapse, or maybe more than temporary, of recognizing how love would apply in this situation. And it's really a moment in time where we have to realize we need to give some time perhaps to thinking about that. And as a result, temptation is something everybody from time to time will experience and feel. And and making sense of it may not be something they can do right away. And by the way, um, I certainly don't want to encourage you to do anything inappropriate or illegal or mean or abusive, but there is a sense in which you shouldn't resist temptation if you haven't understood what a loving thing is to do. You need to have a good reason for moving away from it. And to move away from something simply because, oh, that's sin, is to me kind of an artificial maturity. Albeit, sometimes that's not a bad stopgap measure, as you in maturity can realize that, well, I don't have everything figured out the way I'm sure I eventually will have it more figured out later. So perhaps I should really sometimes live to the maturity I imagine I'm headed toward instead of the maturity I've already achieved. There's a sense in which you can do that, anticipating that the future is going to come with a deeper insight to such things. But nonetheless, I really see that the dealing of temptation involves love. Pursue love, and you can just forget about this temptation issue. In fact, to me, sin mindfulness is psychologically, it's just a useless way to live. It doesn't serve any purposes. But anyway, looks like we have some more viewer comments here. Let me see. I don't mind if someone wants to say that the speaking in tongues is a gift from God. What really bothers me is when they want to claim that painting, dancing, singing, or even just working is not a gift from God. I can understand that. As a theist, and I am, and as a believer in God, as I am, to me, my whole life is a gift from God. The whole universe is a gift from God, and that includes the opportunities it provides us with, and the very fact that we're the kind of people who love these opportunities, who enjoy these opportunities. The love of dance. What an awesome experience it is to not only dance but to love to dance. That's a gift. To love. I'm a guitar player. I love to play the guitar. I had a little boy here a couple of days ago. I think he's only two. One of Lisa's charge. She's a nanny. My wife is, and he loves guitars. And he came up here in my office, and we put different guitars on his lap, and he went through about 4 of my guitars, and just the look on his face, he was just overwhelmed with the awesomeness of guitars, and he loves guitars. What a gift! What a gift from God to find things in life that touch you, that call to you, that spark within you the creative desire to express. That's awesome. Yeah, I can very much identify with the viewer comment there. Well, it seems to me that I've actually written down, believe it or not, 13 questions. We only got like 4 of them, but these are some of the questions that I've been asked, and these are at least some of the answers that I'd have to them now. Anyhow, so we'll see you again next time. And until then, this is Bob Greaves, the Unconventional Pastor. Thanks for being with me.
Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. In just a moment on the NCG studio stage, Dr. Jones will be here hosting the Cult of Honesty, and we'll be talking about the afterlife. What would you like the afterlife to be like? Whether you're an atheist or theist, let's dream together and make up some stuff. In just a moment on the Cult of Honesty.